little out of
Yeah.
place.
What
Like,
should have happened is you probably should have got Cannabis to do the verse, Wyclef to stay on the hook, and there you go. For 98, that would have been a highly anticipated feature because this was your freshman class. This
mhm.
is Nori, DMX, Cannabis, Cameron, Big Pun, and John Forte. That was like the freshman class
Hmm.
that everybody was waiting for. And you could throw Most Definite if you want, right? But
Right. And DMX, right? DMX was around that
yeah.
time too, right? Yeah.
Mhm. And then you got that famous cipher where they're sitting at the
At the
table
table.
rapping.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, he
Man.
doesn't ruin it with the necessary feature. No. So we
No.
talk about Black Thought. Fat Joe says he felt like Black Thought got Pun at first, and then he had to listen to it a few more times, and he's like, "Nah, Pun is sneaky. It was evenly matched."
Hmm.
I actually feel like Black Thought. I feel like both of them watered their verses down.
I was okay. I agree. I was gonna say that too.
As
Um,
somebody who was highly influenced by Black Thought, coming off the Illadelph Half-Life album, knowing what he was capable of doing in that era, the these lyrics, they were very filler. Honestly, I know
both.
Pun got the hip hop quotable for his verse, his first verse on Super Lyrical in the Source that month. But
Yeah.
when you read it, compared to other verses on this album, Pun is just saying words that rhyme. It's more
It was
like, yeah,
exactly. Exactly. I would have loved to have both of them, like, to be able to sit down with Pun and Black Thought to talk about that song,
me too.
because I would love to see, just as a fan listening to the song. um I'm wondering, like, okay, so most of the time when you get two giants, right, that are like lyrical and dope, they go at it, right? Like, one lays their verse down, no holds bar, so does the other one. This one, it seems like they both kind of are like, we're just gonna chill.
Yeah,
Like, it was
it
almost like
sounds
they
like
both decided to not go crazy. Like, how do you have those two, and we get the least.
as a rapper, it sounds like the song that you write when you're under time constraints. Like, hey, I got you in the studio today. This is the only day you're available. Let's write in the studio. Not like a song you set with, and I mean, they did what you want a collaboration to do. They went back and forth. They fed off each other's lines. Like, he said something
Good.
because he's like, "Oh, it's like a religion for true believers," and then Pun comes in, he's like, "Call me baby Jesus." Like, they're
Yeah,
doing
so they
it.
played it off each other.
They're doing it, but there's something empty about. Again, if you read this as text, they're not saying anything. Like,
No.
Pun is saying magical rap, a tragical dap, brain booster chemicals, minerals, and Black Thought
It
is
was
talking
more
about I'm
their
an
flow.
elephant stomping on every elf. Like, but it's not. There's
Mm-mm.
something missing, right?
So I know you don't, uh, like, you don't really compare, right? Like, when you do these, you don't really compare it to something else, but
Right.
it just kind of it makes me think of Biggie and Method Man. The what?
Oh,
Um, like, I think, you know what I mean. But they, even though it's kind of a little laid back type of, you know what I mean. But they, to me, more than like what Pun and Black Thought
yeah,
did.
I
You know what
agree.
I mean?
There's
But
no
it's the same
punchlines on
feel.
here.
But it's the same feel. Like, because you
Yes.
have Biggie, right? He has this album, and then all of a sudden it's like Meth and Biggie, and then
Yeah.
it's like, Black Thought and Pun, and we get that.
Yeah.
Like,
And at the time, Black Thought wasn't on many people's radar. I remember being excited because I'm like, Black Thought, who knows Black Thought? And Pun said he wanted that. And if you think about all the features, Pun strategically picked out everybody. He picked Wyclef for the reason I pointed out. You could tell he picked Deck, because he probably thought Deck was super lyrical. He picked Black Thought because he's like, people don't pay him attention. They don't understand how nasty he is. He said he could have picked Cannabis, but he selected Black Thought purposely. But it sounds like what they're doing is what people think lyrical rap sounds like. Like, I remember when I was a teenage rapper, the words
the
they're using are, yeah, those are the words that I would
backside.
use when I was a teenage rapper. You got to say lyrical, you got to say verbal, you got to
Yeah.
say technique,
and then you're just kind of playing around with. It's almost like when you're in a cipher, right? Like you're outside in the park and just a regular cipher, and
right.
sometimes you would have somebody rhyming, and they're not really saying much, but it's just that they're rhyming. And a lot of times you would get them playing around with the flow and the cadence and the da 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 da, which is like kind of what they did, because Pun even does that one part. He's like, I think you were saying the part when he's like, brains of a digger, the dance, So it sounds good. It's like, good. Oh, it's going with the, but it's not really saying much.
Right.
We haven't mentioned Prodigy, man.
Yeah, let's go to it. Let's go to Tres Leches. What you think?
Love it. Love it. I love it.
The saving grace here is that nobody tries to do, just like I said, you kind of get a RZA sounding RZA beat. You get what you paid for. You want a Prodigy verse that sounds like a Prodigy verse that he would throw anywhere, you got it. You want to inspect the deck verse that sounds like a verse that he would throw anywhere, you got it. And Pun doesn't compromise his style because the other two guests on it. He just raps the way he would rap on that beat any old way. Even though they said the backstory, they were all concerned about each other's verses. They said Pun was called in the studio to find out how Prodigy's verse was, and Deck said he felt like the third wheel, like he didn't really know, but he felt the pressure. They're not doing anything outside of their norm. I said the same thing about Deck on the Gangstar episode. We were talking about Above the Clouds.
Yeah.
I think when that song first came out, it's the surprise factor that made us think that Deck was killing it. But you listen to it and you're like, oh, this just sounds like something from Wu-Tang Forever.
Right.
I come rumbling through the function, that kind of Deck stuff. Prodigy is just talking about, smash, something violent, something you're whack.
So so the only thing about when like doing what we're doing is that we're talking about years and years and years later, right? That we go back and can analyze all this stuff. Now, something else that I think goes into play, when we're talking about classics and stuff too, a lot of it sometimes has to do with timing and certain situations, right? Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is like, I think I can speak for most of us, a lot of us loved Inspector Deck. We didn't get enough of Inspector Deck. We never really got that album from Inspector Deck. So whenever we would get a feature from Inspector Deck, it was like, oh shit, Inspector Deck.
Yeah.
Then you had Prodigy. I mean, come on, man, it's Prodigy. Who didn't like Mobb Deep? And then I think around that time we already kind of had a feel that like Pun and Prodigy, like they were really tight and really cool and stuff like that. So it was a lot of the impact to me of that song was the fact that you had the Inspector Deck of the Wu that we never really got enough of. He's on it's Big Pun with Prodigy, they're kind of cool. And then you get that Prodigy follow and voice, and then it's on a RZA beat. So it's like, here we go. We got a RZA beat, which also wasn't too common outside of the Wu. You know what I mean? Right. So you're kind of seeing like, oh, it was a lot of wow factor to so much to the point where I don't know if I would have cared if they were rhyming the ABCs on that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So sometimes it's also the timing and
The hardest part about doing these reviews is trying to separate the nostalgia from looking at it like an analyst, right? Because I remember I was doing backflips, and then if you want to take it a step further, they were scratching Rakim in there, so it's almost like the ghost of Rakim, right? Is featured on there.
Everything was perfect.
I felt the same way you felt, and so I talked about this on the Gangstar episode that there's a lot of times we talk about Inspector Deck with pity, but when you think about it, he had a perfect setup for his album coming out later this year. Because he was on Above the Clouds, he was on the Pun album. All he needed to do was drop a banging single, but it didn't happen. It didn't really happen. But yes, they all did their thing for what you want from them. Like if I pay, you get what you pay for, right? It's almost like when you go to a concert and somebody sings the song a different way, and you're like, I didn't want this.
Yeah.
You got Prodigy doing what Prodigy does, and you got Deck doing what Deck does, and RZA doing what RZA does, and
It,
Rock
it,
Raid
it,
doing what it was perfect.
and
And
Rock
Pun,
Raider, like, what, dude? What,
yeah,
how, when, see, that's the thing, is like, how often do you get that? You know what I mean? How often do you get,
yeah.
that's what I feel, again, look, like, just talking about it now, it gives me like chills, you know what I mean? Just like back to
It's
what we said in the beginning that you reminded me, like, we represent that's what we mean by true hip hop feeling, is that when you can talk or remember something and it gives you chills or
yeah,
goosebumps, and that's
yeah.
what that was. That's what that was.
Yeah, that's the most hip hop sounded track on the album. Besides maybe Parental Discretion, but just pure uncut hip hop, Tres Leches for sure. Right.
Yeah.
We also have Nori and Miss Jones. They just on the hooks. I think Pun wrote the hook for You Came Up, and Nori just had to recite it. So that was kind of easy peasy. And Miss Jones wrote her hook for Punish Me. Anyone else I'm forgetting?
As far as feature, well, you
Oh,
mentioned the you mentioned the Busta
Busta
Rhymes.
Rhymes.
Yeah.
Busta Rhymes. Parental Discretion. Were you disappointed that it wasn't a rap verse?
Yeah. And okay. I was disappointed after the fact that it was just more like a hook that he was doing type of thing, or but even then, he's done better hooks on other people's stuff than that also. I didn't it was yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I didn't
Okay,
like
I
it.
got you.
It felt like he was trying to deliver that Busta Rhymes.
Yes.
What's the word I'm looking for? That rah rah. Like, he was trying to deliver that, but it just wasn't. It wasn't coming out like that.
Yeah.
So
It could
I
have
didn't
been.
like it.
It could have been someone else on the hook. It could have been a whole different hook. It's another. I'm paying for what you're famous for. Hey, give me that Busta Rhymes sound on this, but it wasn't a marriage, right?
No.
Yeah, I feel that, and I should point this out about hooks. This is the '90s New York rap. This is still that time period where '90s New York rap were doing what I call verse hooks. The most famous example of this is going to be White Lines by Mobb Deep, where your hook might as well be a damn verse. There's no repeated refrain, right? So a lot of the hooks on this album are like that. Parental Discretion, Boomerang, Capital Punishment. That's a whole verse. That's not even Glamour Life. Those are verses. They're not really hooks. But I feel what you're saying about Busta Rhymes. I thought the same thing as a kid. I'm like, he's trying to Busta Rhymes instead of just doing it. That's how I felt Black Thought was. Black Thought was trying the Black Thought instead of Black Thought, right? He's like, look, my vital, lyrical style, like, just rap, bro. We didn't talk about Joe.
The singer.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Joe is a very important feature. He gives Pun his biggest hit. He gives us one of the greatest.
I like that. That was cool.
Yeah, I gotta give Joe his prop, because what Pun did essentially was take Joe's song, which was a kind of B-level radio hit, and turn it into an A+ hit with their new blending of that. And he taught him the word Boricua, because apparently he didn't know how to pronounce it, and Pun had to teach him that. And now, I mean, it was a moment in New York history for Blacks and Latinos, because we don't. I know you said what you said earlier, but I mean, as a New Yorker, like, we don't think about that shit. I heard more Dominicans and Puerto Ricans going at it than I heard Blacks and like separate. We're right here. We're together. I never even thought about it. Like, J-Lo would be my girlfriend, and no one would think twice about it. Like,
no, I think overall in New York, which is, man, this is gonna take us some. Okay,
it's okay.
No, I'm just saying, because depending on where you at, there's different cultures. And in New York, when it comes to Latins and African Americans, Latins, this and that, it was always a melting pot. And even though it was somewhat separated, but they still kind of rock together. Now, of course, like anything else, you're gonna have your cliques, right? That maybe, you might have a group of, let's say, Puerto Ricans that don't get along with you know, the blacks from over here or whatever. But that's just like, you know what I mean? Within inside.
Yeah.
But the overall in New York, everybody's like this. But then you
Right.
go to like California, that doesn't exist. So it looks
so
different.
different.
But that's why I think a lot of this talk that came up or comes up every so often about Latins being there in the beginning of hip hop comes because some people that are from the outside looking in don't really know. Or the other thing that, like, for example, you just said that a lot of cats that were in your crew, some were Dominican, right? But I don't know, you know, you might have seen a Dominican that some people would have been like, oh, I thought he was black.
Yeah, everybody thought I was Dominican when I would be with my crew.
Well, or vice versa, right? So
right.
I heard, I forgot who it was, but somebody just said, and I've heard it multiple times. You know, you talk in the 70s and all those times. Sometimes there was really no, you know, sometimes there was no reason to like walk around like, hey, you know, I'm Cuban. Like, you know what I mean? I'm dark skinned, but I'm cute. Like, it was just, you just did what you were doing and you hung out with who you were hanging out. Yeah, let me tell you something. You know, I just recently found out Mr. Lin. You know Mr. Lin?
Yeah.
I just found out recently, like maybe a couple of months ago, yeah, that he's Dominican. I never knew he was Dominican. I don't know if you knew that or not. I never knew
I did
that.
not. We talked about Company Flow, right?
Company Flow. We had him on our show and did an interview with him and everything. Didn't know he was Dominican. I found out because somebody was doing a live or something like that, and he was in the comments, and they were talking about this whole Latins and hip hop, and I think it was Destroy who in the comments said Mr. Lin Dominican or something, and I was like, I tagged, I was like, Lin, you Dominican? He's like, yeah, but dude, think about it. All these years, maybe some people knew, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that, and it was the norm. You know, it's just like now everything is so.
Everything is so.
That's a whole different topic, though. But
but I mean, it comes up as we talk about this, and as we get to like the impact dimension, we're gonna have to touch on it. But yeah, taking all of that into account, the features, do they help or harm the album? 5 means they do nothing but help. 1, of course, it takes away.
That's crazy. Let's see. 1, 2. I would say a 3.5. Yeah. I would say 3.5 because again, you know, the Busta Rhymes to me brought it down a lot. The Wyclef one again, like we said, that one was like, so that one brings it down a little bit too.
Gotcha. Dimension 7. This is what you've been itching to get to the whole time. The question of, does the weakest song on the album bring it down, or do the weakest songs, plural, bring it down? And this is all about the idea of every album, after a while, you start just kind of jumping around to your favorites, right? Or you have it on vinyl, or you have it on CD, or it's digital now. You couldn't do it on tape. Tape, you just kind of have to fast forward or just listen through. But after a while, whether the album is just solid all the way through or not, we have our favorites we go to. But there's always those albums that people are like, man, this would be perfect if they left these 2 songs off. So does this album have moments like that where the songs are so weak to you that you wish they weren't there?
Man,
I don't usually chime in on any of these, but since I have you here, this is a special episode, I'm gonna say Punish Me and Fast Money are
Fast Money. Fast Money, yeah, okay. I agree. I forgot about Fast Money. That's right. Fast Money. What was the other one you said?
Punish Me.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that. Forgot about that.
And it's those beats just sound so outdated. And I know I read somewhere that Joe really thinks that Fast Money is like one of the most cinematic rap songs ever made, but it's just so basic. It's almost too basic. It sounds like a demo quality beat, and it's not gripping enough to capture your interest, for no matter how great the story that Pun might be telling, even though he's telling a really violent kind of cliche gangster rap story, which also adds to it feeling a little weak to me. It sounds trite. It's all like a caper going wrong, but the beat doesn't capture you to marry that. Cinematic beats that make you want to hear the whole plot. Unravel. That beat sounded outdated. It also sounded a couple years too late. Punish Me,
Right.
I thought it was a Hot 97 radio commercial the way
I
it
didn't
sounded.
like
It
that.
sounded like an R&B song from 1992.
But I didn't really even. I don't even think I would have liked it in '92 either. I didn't like that song. I didn't like the. Yeah, that one didn't do anything for me. I
It sounded
didn't
the
like
most forced. It was very forced.
it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
those are two.
Those are my
Uh,
two. What are
yeah,
yours?
no, I agree with you. I agree with you 100% on those two.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I mean, if we're talking, so let me see. Okay, skipping around, I would probably take off Caribbean Connection.
Yeah.
I would probably take that one off, and the what's the one,
Parental discretion.
the parental discretion. Yeah,
Okay.
so I would probably. I think if I took those four, I don't know if I'm missing any other ones. Those are the only ones that jump out at me, really. But I
I
think if I
th- I
took those,
throw I throw Super Lyrical off too. It's right on the
I
border.
mean,
Super
it
Lyrical and
is
You
it is
Came Up.
borderline. It is borderline, but you said you came up too. You would take off.
Those are both borderline songs for me. They
Oh
don't they
wow.
don't
Okay.
they don't bring the album down, but they don't boost it up
They
either. They
don't
just
boost it
kind of
up either.
they're right there.
Oh, I don't know. I like you came. I would have to say I would leave Super Lyrical just again. It's not to the point where you know what I mean. Like I would skip over it or anything. You know what I mean? So it's like I would leave that. I think if I took those four that we mentioned off, um, it would be a complete package.
I do you one better. The fact that there's a track that got left off called Wishful Thinking with Be Real, C.H.G. Rap, who
Oh,
obvious that Pun is super influenced by, and
yeah.
Fat Joe. I'm like, Super Lyrical would have to go off in a heartbeat to put that track on.
If you had that one, of course.
Yeah. I don't know how it didn't make it on the album. What's the explanation? How did Punish Me stay on? Or how did Fast Money stay on? Especially
Maybe a clearance thing. Maybe who knows?
maybe because I think
don't know.
Domingo produced that one. Or don't quote me on that. I feel like Domingo produced that one.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah. So how bad are these tracks bringing the album down on the scale from 1 to 5? 5 means it was barely affected by them. 1 means that it put a dent in it.
I'm gonna say a 4. The reason why I was gonna say 3.5. I was gonna say 3.5, but if I have to be honest, you know, going back and thinking about when I would play it and this and that, it didn't affect me to the point where I was like, oh, like you know what I mean? Like I gotta take this off. Or I don't want to hit it. It didn't affect me to that extent. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna say a 4. I almost went with 3.5, just because of how I feel about Punish
Parental
Me
question, yeah, and
and Punish Me. But no, I'll give it a 4. I'll give it
okay.
a 4.
And I've never heard anyone talk. I thought everybody felt the same way about Fast Money and Punish Me until for Plates and Crates, we used to do a live cover band event, and that's how the whole brand started. And
Right.
for our Big Pun show, I remember when my crew we're getting ready, we're rehearsing, and I'm like, "Do we want to do Punish Me?" And they're like, "Oh, that's the joint. You gotta have that." And I think
Really?
people in my band related because what Pun was talking about, a mom keeping the son away from the father, that kind of stuff. The messages he was talking about, a cheating girlfriend. But I'm like, I don't know if that makes the song good. I'll keep it on the set list because y'all say so. But I'm like, I don't know. But
I mean, again, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? Are we talking about how good was the message or how good is the song? I mean, like how many songs, for example, that you could think of, let's say like a Rakim, where the beat that he was rhyming off was whack, but if you listen to what he's saying, it's like, yeah, I mean, he's talking some ill stuff, or he's talking about something that's dope, but unfortunately, the beat is whack, so I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? it's two different things you're talking about there.
Absolutely. These are the last three dimensions here. Dimension 8, mass appeal. How much of a reach was this album destined to have just off of how it sounded and what was done around it? Did this have what it took to have a wide global reach? I'd say, Joe said that Pun, if left up to his devices, would have just been a horrorcore rapper. And I was like, horrorcore? But then when I hear songs like You Ain't a Killer and some of the ways that he's describing street stuff, I'm like, oh yeah.
I can see that.
He's definitely he swims in that Killer Priest territory sometimes, where he talks about like ripping limbs off and doing like some real macabre stuff. Even on something that's supposed to be a single. So I'm not a player of the original one. I was listening to it in the car with my fiance, and I realized I had to skip it because I'm like, yo, this shit is raunchy as hell. By the time he gets to the second verse, I'm like, oh, this is not. And a lot of time rappers do this. My boy Brandon used to bring this to my attention about Ja Rule. Ja Rule in his hooks would be saying like baby, but in the verses he'd be talking crazy. But they think because they have like a singing hook and a soft beat that women will like it. And I guess by and large women do, because you'll hear women a lot of times say, oh, I just like the beat, I didn't even know they said that.
or the sing-along hook type of thing.
Right. And so when you hear a song like I'm Not a Player, it's like every verse kind of got progressively more raunchy. Like he starts going in like in Spanish and in English. Like I'm like, whoa, did you just say that? Right. So you can tell that he has some of that horrorcore sentiment in him. And when I guess that's where the A&R and Fat Joe come in, where they're like, okay, we need you to do softer stuff, and that's when they brought the Still Not a Player remix. But it sounded like Pun had a mind of his own to also kind of at least put some things in that direction, because Caribbean Connection and You Came Up, those were pretty softer, and those were his choices.
Right. And it also kind of had a feel of like, you could kind of tell that he liked that kind of music as well. Like, I don't think like, the OJs and stuff like you could tell that he vibed for those type of songs and music and the old classics. So it was, now if he didn't have somebody in his ear, maybe kind of suggestion like, hey, maybe do a little bit of this just so we can get that broader, who knows what we would have gotten. But that just also goes to show you his talent, that he was able to adapt and do it well.
Now, this album without Still Not a Player, does it have commercial success?
Man,
the single's strong enough here.
Commercial success, right? You're talking about. That's tough. I don't know if he would have. I mean, definitely regional. You know what I mean? I think he would have definitely made an impact. East Coast type of stuff, but to become like a household name, that would have been. I don't know. I don't. Maybe not. I think that did it for him. I think that. Yeah, no, that definitely did. It definitely did it for him. He might have been, someone that is gaining the attention of true hip hop fans and the attention of other, heavyweight artists that are out there. Like, oh, you know what I mean? But listen, even DMX needed that. You know what I mean? Even DMX needed that type of song to make him a household name. So I think you're right.
When we look at that freshman class, there's Nori and there's DMX that rose to the top. Pun and Cameron kind of hit the same mark, and then you got Cannabis and John Forte, who just could not get out the gate. Yeah, they couldn't. Yeah. And so without Still Not a Player, we got to look at the performance of the other singles. So the original I'm Not a Player, I don't remember that getting any radio play. I remember getting video play and mixed show play. Right. Even though he had OJs in the video, he had a lot of cameos in there. it just wasn't on the radio's radar like that. So mixed shows and Rap City play. That's a good look. You're Not a Killer and Twins were the street singles. They were bubbling. I heard that on underground radio. I heard it on the mixtapes. Then you get Caribbean Connection and You Came Up, which I think only exists on radio because of the success of Still Not a Player. Those are your, okay, you get to squeeze out some more singles from this album because you got a monster hit.
And I think also, I think Nori actually helped that out a lot too, man, because you know, Nori coming off of the Firm album with that verse, and then it, you know what I'm saying. So it was kind of you almost kind of got that same vibe when he jumped on.
Yeah.
You Came Up, and I think it kind of carried on into that. So I think that helped that single out a lot too.
It was strategic. He picked the collabs, the commercial collabs with the people who were winning commercially.
Who were winning at the moment. Yeah.
Wyclef is straight off a Diamond album and his own multi-platinum solo. So let's tap that lane, and it worked. But I don't know if those singles without Still Not a Player would have held him up.
No. Yeah. It would have planted a good seed. But you needed the right fertilizer and the right amount of water, which was that song, to make it, you know what I mean, grow to what he needed to be.
Yeah.
In that aspect.
And he got the memo because he softens up on those 3 songs. On Caribbean Connection, he's not going as hard with all of the gruesome stuff or the thuggery as he is on other tracks. And on You Came Up, it's real light subject matter. He's just talking about his come up. He's not cursing a lot on that. And on Still Not a Player, it's softer sexual references. So if the original Not a Player is like Andrew Dice Clay level, like hickory dickory dock, this is more like Chris Rock level. Still Not a Player, right?
Good.
Yeah. So on a scale from 1 to 5, what are we giving this for mass appeal?
Man, I mean, I think you have to. Give it a 5, man, because I mean, again, regardless, even if it was just that one song that got him to that, it got him to it. You know what I mean? Regardless, so I give it a 5.
Yeah.
I give it a 5.
There you go. Fair enough. Good point, right? Because it's like whether you win the game by buzzer beat or not, you won the game.
You won the game. You know what I mean? So I give it a 5.
All right. So Dimension 9, the 3 I's, the impact, innovation, influence. This is where we have those big discussions about how iconic this album is, right? What it meant so many things just from one presentation. It was the saving grace of Fat Joe's career, which, he had established himself in hip hop, but as a solo artist wasn't ringing bells. It brought his name to a new level of importance. It established him as a mogul, a businessman, a mentor, and it doubled down on the Latin representation in mainstream hip hop. We were just talking about how Laz has been there from the beginning. In New York, Latino rap history, it was a little far and few between. I think the West Coast had done a better job at having multiple rap acts that you could point out and be like, okay, they're from La Raza. Like, we know we got this guy. We got lighter shades of brown. We got Kid Frost. Were they popping? No, not on the mainstream level, but you knew there were droves of that section of rap. East Coast Latino rappers, you're like, Fat Joe, Beat Nuts, and then it just kind of trails off from there, right? This brought the conversation all the way to the front, like, nah, this is our guy.
Right.
So I think that impact alone is huge. It brought Terror Squad's relevance up. It brought the Bronx. Let's talk about the Bronx, which is another borough that just was not getting shouted out. After Staten Island rose, I remember Harlem and the Bronx just kind of like, what?
It was a little, yeah. It wasn't.
For the mid-90s, it was Brooklyn, Queens, It was Brooklyn,
Mhm.
Queens, Shaolin, all on all the records. Pun
Right,
brought
right.
the
He
Bronx.
he kind of put that flag again for the Bronx. So Impact, yeah, definitely. Uh,
Innovation. Again, I bought it on tape. I distinctly remember going into the record store, buying this album on tape, and it was shaped like a pack of cigarettes. And I
yeah,
thought
yeah,
that
yeah.
was
I
the most
remember that. Yeah,
genius.
yeah,
And it had Vanessa Del Rio on the insert. For you youngins, Vanessa Del Rio was like a porn star legend, the original. This is back when porn stars used to look like aunties. Now they look like your wife, someone you want to wife up. Back in the
yeah.
day, they
Right.
used to look like your tia, right? So like,
Yeah.
but everything about the imagery was iconic. You opened the pack differently. This was about as big of a deal for a tape as Raekwon with the purple tape. It was open from
Right.
the top,
Was it like
and you
like?
pull out the insert.
Oh, this was the
There you
insert
go.
of the.
Right, that's the insert.
This was the other side of it.
Oh, is that a map
Oh,
of the Bronx?
can you see it? I don't know if it's cutting off a little bit, but
Yeah, is that a map of the Bronx on the other side?
this was the map. This was the map. Yep.
Wow.
Well,
That's
it was just a map. It had like, it shows on here Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and it does say the Bronx up there. Yep.
right.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
Vanessa Del Rio is the Statue of Liberty, actually, right?
Yeah, delivered it.
Yeah, man. So the innovation
Yeah.
is there in the packaging. You can tell this was a project that Loud Records was taking seriously. Y'all see the Air Pun logo on my shirt, but even before, this was more for the second album imagery. But
Right.
before that, all through New York, it wasn't uncommon to see the three letters on top and the three letters on bottom on all the stickers and snipes around the city. Big
Yeah.
Pun.
Talking about the big pun right there, right? The bread, the
Yeah.
bread. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you see that all over. I remember I was on Loud Record Street Team for one day.
Mhm.
I worked for Crazy Sam from Video Music
Oh,
Box, and I was
music.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, I'm never doing this again. But I can tell you, they have one of the best marketing ethics of the '90s. Like they really had the city plastered when the album was coming out.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, man. So what we talked, we said impact and
Innovation
innovation.
and now
Innovation.
influence.
I mean, you know, it's kind of weird and not weird, but going back to like what you were saying, right? As far as let's say Latin artists, hip hop artists let's talk about in the boroughs, right? We got to mention you had Curious George as well.
Yes,
Um,
Funk Dubious.
Funk Dubious, like there were some artists out there that were doing their thing. You had Fat Joe came out, and it was kind of like, you're like kind of rooting for Fat Joe. It's like, oh shoot, like he's doing it. But I think you touched on it too when Pun came out. It's weird that, like I said, with Fat Joe, it happened, and I think it went up like 100 times more when Pun did it though.
Yes,
Um,
because it was a top
it's
tier
a
lyric.
yes, but there's also something, right, that we always say, right? There's something that you just can't. It doesn't matter. You could be the nicest MC. You could have all the lyrics, all this and that. Sometimes but you still don't. You know what I mean? And there was just something about Pun, his charisma, he just had what do they say? Like they have that, they have it. You know what I mean? Pun had that. He had it to the point where not only was it in the Latin community, but I think no matter what you were, where you were from, you had to give it to him. You know what I mean? But within the Latin community, it was just like, yo, we have one that
Yeah,
lyrical,
and not just
lyrical,
have one. We might have the guy.
the
Like
guy.
the
It was
guy.
like lyrical, charisma, funny, street, can make radio friendly songs. Um, like he had the whole package. So I think in because again, and then we could go even further back. I mean, we could talk about obviously like the Ruby D's and Prince Whipper Whip. I mean, I'm talking about like they all did their thing. You know what I mean, and represented and paved the way for finally you get up to Big Pun. But if you're talking about influence, man, that was. It was crushing, you know what I mean? It was like, yo, we lost.
It was there, and I think
we lost our guy. Who else has duplicated the Air Jordan silhouette? and nobody ever said anything about it.
No one, not a soul. Yeah, it's just. I'll take it a step further. He was filling a Biggie void. He was doing all the things that people love that Biggie did. He was raunchy but funny. He was gangster but lyrical, and like you said, he had those elements, and he was doing it.
And he messed around with all of your favorite artists. Like you know what I mean? He collaborated. He was, whether it was Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, Wyclef, like all of your favorite artists. He, in one way or another, would do something with them, or whatever. It was all just like.
And one thing he did, I think he gave, just in that 2 bars that he did, he brought attention to something that rappers have been doing forever. But because the beat dropped perfectly, we finally started giving more of a wow factor to when rappers stack syllables, right? So we've heard Kool G rap like this, Big Daddy Kane, for a few years prior. But when they dropped the beat on that Dead in the Middle, little did we know, all of a sudden a newfound respect for rappers who are able to crunch words. Tretch had been doing this for a long time, but when Pun did it, we saw the game shift to wordy rap. Cannabis, Eminem comes out the next year, and we're ready for that because now we're thirsty for more. Where do we get more of that sound from?
and again, man, it's like that's why you say like, oh, he the one, because those are moments that like, who would have thought that bar that he did, that little piece would become so big, so monumental, unforgettable to this day. Like, that's what makes the greats, man. And to think of what he said, like
Joe said that was just like a silly little tongue twister rap that he would keep and say.
That he didn't want to use or something, right? Like he didn't even want to put that in there.
He didn't even want to use it. So what he did when he said, I finally have to use it because Joe's insistent, he set it up in a way where it made sense. That whole verse is about him going after some Italian guy. So he's not just saying it to say it.
He's saying it to say it. He's saying the story, and then it was just it. How many times did you rewind that when you first heard the very first time? The very first time.
I remember I had it on tape.
And I had it on cassette at one time too. I wish I still had it, but you rewind it, trying to catch every part until you learned it. And again, like you said, it's not. Sometimes some artists will do those little type of things, but they're just throwing something in there like that.
Right.
This was something that you're listening, and it was like a movie. You know what I mean? You're it's like a chase, and then you get to the climax of it, and that was it was like, whoa,
right,
that was
right,
yeah. That's
so on a scale from 1 to 5,
the chills.
What we giving this for impact, innovation, and influence?
5.
That was easy. Takes us to the final dimension of category 1, the overall timelessness and uniqueness. Dimension 10.
Overall timeless and uniqueness.
Right. We talked about some of these beats sounding a little outdated, so that might take away from that timelessness feel.
Okay.
When you listen back to this album, does it feel like it's year, or it feels like any year and you could play it without cringing?
taking away the songs that we said, it feels like oh man, I'm trying. Okay, do we look at this as, for example, someone now that has never heard Capital Punishment picks up this CD or
Right.
whatever, downloads it, whatever, and listens to it for the very first time, right?
Yes.
What would they? Damn, it's tough, right? Because again, some things unfortunately are time sensitive, and like if you weren't there, but I think overall, if somebody picked it up right now that never heard of Pun, would, man, what's interesting thinking about it in this fashion is that some of the songs that we said that we would probably leave off might actually be liked more now.
They might. I doubt it.
Because,
I think some music
but I'm talking about a younger generation.
Mm-hmm.
The times that we're in now, where things are a little more, sensitive and this and that, some of those songs might appeal more to them now. Actually,
I think some music rules are universal, right? Some things are just they're whack or just a no forever.
but I'm
right?
not. But for us.
No,
for us.
I'm talking about I think some things are universally whack. Right?
You don't think a song like Punishment is kind of hard because of the beat. Like if it had a different beat, I think it would maybe work better now. You know what I mean?
Right,
I think that one.
We can't do that, right?
I know. That one.
So
but like
some of Baby Got Back, right? So Baby Got Back, even when it came out to us rap fans, it sounded like it was a commercial song. Right. Yeah. To this day, people like it, but they like it because they know it as this kind of pop song. So I think some rules are universal.
That's true. That's true. All right. Okay. I don't know. I still think that maybe some of those songs might hit better now. But can I say a 4?
Yeah, you can do 4.5. You can do 3.5. Yeah.
I'm gonna say 4. I'm gonna say 4. I don't, anybody that watching this, don't kill me up too much, man. I accepted this invitation. I did do some research again, and I did listen to these songs again, and I did some homework. But I will admit that Malik has a very good show here. Has a very well thought out scale, and it makes you really think. So
okay, I'm sorry. The most important part, if y'all do, any of y'all that are mad at Uncle E's ratings, please leave your own. That's what it's for. Leave your comments down, or go to theraproulette.com where you can vote and leave your rankings in each of these dimensions for every album that we cover. And like I said, it's the Rotten Tomatoes for hip hop. So I just want us all to get in the habit of using this when we talk about albums. So you can't be mad at one man when you left your opinion there too. Let's get a
right. So just like you said, man, head over to his YouTube channel. You will be able to find this on, my channel along with Journal Sincere. That's Changing of the Hip Hop Guards. Just type that in on YouTube, Changing of the Hip Hop Guards. And and leave it in the comments, man. If you want to hit me up on Instagram and tell me I'm crazy for what I said, that's fine. I welcome all, bad, cool. But yeah, man, thank you very much. I appreciate you for even allowing me to have fun with you like this.
Man, thank you for even allowing me on your platform.
Especially on a classic like this.
A monster, man. And the representation, like we had to do this right. I had to get some real OGs from the era.
Special shout out to Minnesota Money Boss players. Also, thank you for joining us and giving us a little bit of backstory to some of the stuff that went on with that. Big shout out to you, man. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, much love. The Bronx is home, so we got legends up in here, and we'll do it again. This is only one part of it.
One part.
And we'll do category 2, where we go over the rap performance on this album. I know these episodes are always long with his guests because we really get into our breakdown of the album, the product itself. The album we're talking about turns 25 today. It's the 25th anniversary on this day Rest in peace to Big Pun.
That's right.
And y'all know what it is. Until next time, F A Rap Critic. They talk about it while I live it.
Dope. Dope.